So this video is a little bit unconventional. Obviously we are anamorphic right now, but I'm gonna kind of be showing the different characteristics of different levels of anamorphic and actually comparing that to a spherical lens that's meant to look anamorphic. I think there's a lot of YouTube tutorials out there on how to fake anamorphic, but they're made by people who don't even have anamorphic lenses. So I wanted to make a video that actually compare and contrasted real anamorphic lenses at different strengths to a spherical lens that's meant to have that Anamorfake look to it. And I'll tell you what I'm doing right now, because I don't have a 2x anamorphic lens. I'm running the Blazar Remus, which is a 1.5x anamorphic lens right now with the Sur 1.25x anamorphic adapter, which gives us like a 1.875x anamorphic lens. So it's super close to 2x because it's a long focal length. The bokeh gets extra stretched because of the adapter. There's a bunch of weird scientific lensy mechanical stuff that ends up happening, but this is pretty close to 2x. And throughout the video, I'm just going to be changing that strength of the squeeze and comparing and contrasting that to something that has no squeeze at all. In the end, we're looking for a 239 or 240 aspect ratio. That tends to be the default when you're shooting anamorphic. So in this video, we're just gonna crop everything in to 239 and compare it from there, see the differences, and see which lenses will best give you the anamorphic look, along with a couple accessories. All right, so currently we are on the Blazar Remus with the Sur 1.25x anamorphic adapter, again giving us that 1.875 squeeze. And because it's an anamorphic adapter, again, it's gonna look a little more like 2x, so we can kind of treat it as such. This is what that looks like. And here's a crop. And you're probably noticing right now, it's a little bit soft. And by the way, for the sake of this test, we're shooting everything at T4/f4. So now I'm gonna take the adapter off. Not gonna change anything else, just gonna take the adapter off. You're gonna see the squeeze change, you're gonna see the field of view change, and we're gonna kind of talk about these differences. Okay, now we are at just 1.5x anamorphic. This is a much more reasonable anamorphic look. I think for a lot of us who aren't shooting on super high-end cameras, I think this works out better, especially since the camera I'm shooting on is the Lumix S5. It does not have open gate, so we're shooting at a 17:9 aspect ratio, I think. I might be shooting 16:9. I didn't really check before I started shooting this. I'll throw up something in post to tell y'all. But we're shooting a more traditional aspect ratio. We're not shooting open gate or 4:3 or any other thing that would give us a taller image and less D-squeeze. So 1.5x is actually really good for a lot of mirrorless cameras, specifically the FX30, the FX3, a lot of older Lumix cameras, any Canon camera. And I think this lens personally is really good for Super 35 because if you want a cleaner image, you can definitely get that. And you're probably just noticing that there's a little bit of barrel distortion right here. And that was probably stronger with the anamorphic adapter on top of that. And those are the kind of things that we look for when we're dealing with anamorphic. It's, you know, what's the fall off like? What's the chromatic aberrations like? You know, what's the blur on the top and the bottom? You know, what's kind of, because a lot of anamorphics, you know, especially like Atlas Mercury's, Atlas Orion's, you kind of have this like tilt shift blur you can see, and I'll show some examples of, you know, adding that in post to get that look, and we'll talk about that later, especially with the spherical Anamorfake look. But as for this look, you're just gonna notice a lot of barrel distortion and a lot of fall off towards the edges, and that's what we're trying to recreate here. So now we're gonna jump over to spherical. I'm gonna show you two lenses and talk about why one is a whole lot better than the other, even though it's not talked about at all. The Helios is up first, and we're still on the Blazar Remus for this shot. Okay, currently we are on the Helios 442. It is at f2. F-stops and T-stops are different, but they're not that much different, so I'm not really gonna worry about it too much. This lens obviously has some similar characteristics. The most notable is the fact that we are not getting any barrel distortion out of it. There's basically none. Lines are straight. It is a 58mm focal length, so we're gonna get a wider field of view than that 65, but it's gonna kind of keep things a little bit tighter if you're comparing it to, you know, using, you know, actual anamorphic glass. You're gonna notice that things are a little more boxed in, and we're gonna add a letterbox. I'll crop that out so y'all can see the difference between this footage and, you know, anamorphic aspect ratio footage. But At the end of the day, I don't think the Helios really does it. It gets really close, but there's a better lens. Okay, right now we are on the Nikkor 50mm 1.8G. I love this lens. It's got a lot of characteristics that just lots of spherical lenses don't have at this focal length. It's got barrel distortion, which you can enhance in post. It has more swirl than the Helios, which is why I think this lens is just insanely overlooked. I'll show some examples up on the screen, and some of these might have the anamorphic adapter on it. I shoot this lens a lot with the anamorphic adapter, but all the swirl is purely from this lens. None of that comes from the adapter. So it's just a phenomenal spherical lens. Not to mention they come at right around 100 to 150 bucks on eBay. I'm not quite sure of that price. I'll throw something up on the screen just to confirm that, but it's as cheap as the Helios. It's got a faster speed than the Helios. It's a little bit sharper than the Helios. It handles chromatic aberrations better than the Helios. It's got, you know, just better anamorphic look. It's got the swirl, it's got the barrel distortion. That's something the Helios doesn't have. And I think this lens by itself is really cool. And partially what we'll be talking about today is the clear streak filter. And I definitely dog on this filter. It's literally, I mean, basically just fishing line inside of a piece of glass. It does create the streaks. If you want the anamorphic lens streaks, that's pretty much the only way to do it outside of actually shooting with anamorphic glass. It's just a better lens, and I don't see why more filmmakers aren't picking these old Nikon lenses up. I think people like the really vintage Nikon lenses, but these newer Nikon lenses are usually faster, more affordable, and I think provide a more anamorphic look in the long run. All right, so I actually want to strike from the record my previous comment about clear streak filters. Clear streak filters are definitely not the best way to get a fake anamorphic flare. I completely forgot about plugins. Now, I have not messed with anamorphic flare plugins in post, and so I'm gonna go out on a whim and say they're better. I've seen a few examples, but I don't really know for sure, and it's something I'll do research into. But I would say that if you're really trying to, you know, fake the anamorphic look on a budget, clear streak filters might be your best bet, but I think there are better options out there, you know, in terms of plugins. And that's what we're kind of about to go into. We're about to hop into Vinci Resolve, and I'm going to show you why doing some extra final touches in post will help you get a better final product, such as adding barrel distortion, swirl, and getting a bit of tilt shift blur in there. It's all tiny little things that you don't really notice, but that you kind of feel. And it adds, you know, altogether, it adds a whole nother level to faking that anamorphic look. And, you know, part of the reason, you know, I say that you need to get a lens like the Helios or this Nikon 50mm that I'm on right now is, you know, with any VFX shot, you're gonna need a really good in-camera shot for your composite as well. So, you know, with things like Dune, they shot with actual sand screens, which is super cool. And that ended up creating a whole lot better of a VFX process, and it made it look a whole lot more real. VFX looks really real when you partially capture in camera and partially work on it in post. Okay, we are here in DaVinci Resolve, and I'm just gonna break down the 3 effects that I use to kind of enhance that anamorphic look. The first I use is radial blur. I love radial blur. It's gonna take that swirl on the side and just enhance it. Here's with it off, and here's with it on. Again, this really just adds fall off. It adds some swirl, but mostly it's about the fall off. The reason you wanna use this with a already swirly lens, such as the Helios, or especially the Nikon, since it's a whole lot more swirly, is because it'll kind of just blend those. Again, what I was talking earlier about VFX applies here. You really need to have something in camera that looks similar to what you're doing in post, and that swirl makes that work really good. I just take that radial blur, adjust the strength to however much I want, usually about at 0.2 is good. Then you just create a mask and then move the mask wherever you want. I usually invert it so that the swirl is on the outside. And there we go. That's it. That's all you have to do for the radial blur. Next is the tilt shift blur. Here's with that off and here's with it on. You probably didn't see much of a difference. It's because it's not super strong right now. But if you adjust that blur strength and turn it up, you can really see that effect take hold. You can adjust the focus range to make it tighter or farther. So you can just put it at the top, adjust that blur strength. If you go under lens iris, you can even adjust the anamorphism. So you can actually get stretch out of it, which is super cool when you're trying to really dial in the anamorphic look and get it looking exactly how you want it for your tastes. It's a really nice touch that the team at Blackmagic has come up with, and I really appreciate it because I love being able to dial in exactly what I want. The next is just something to kind of blend it all together, and it's the glow plugin. I usually drop the shine threshold and then come down and change the composite type to soft light. Otherwise, you're gonna have it looking, you know, a little crazy if you have some really bright lights. But I think it looks nice. Turn it up a little bit. All right, there's with it on, there's with it off. It can darken it up, so sometimes dropping the opacity or, you know, turning back up your gain is super helpful. So here's with it on, here's with it off. It adds some contrast, some color pop and saturation, and ultimately just kind of brings the image together. And I just really like that it can kind of blend everything together and make it look cohesive and like it was all captured in camera. Now I have the same effects on this image right here. This is something we shot outside earlier that you've already seen that part of the video, but I'm gonna turn that off and then turn it back on. You can see it really adds this anamorphic effect to it. Considering we were shooting at f4 and the lens wasn't super close to the subject, there's gonna be less swirl, less blur, less bokeh, less of all that stuff. So if you want it to look more anamorphic, again, stopping down to, you know, this is wide open at 1.8, I think obviously gives more of that look, but that's personal choice and your own creative ideas. So do what you will with that. Next, I want to go over a few shots from my buddy Graham Holiday's film Milagro. It has Cullen Moss in it. If you like Outer Banks and you've been watching that lately, that's Shoop. So Graham did an absolutely wonderful job of getting him on set because he was an amazing actor to work with and he's very talented. So let's dive in because I've used all of these same tricks on this clip.
And he doesn't like it. So he doesn't want to.
I was on my way to turn in my 2 weeks. I couldn't stomach all the blood.
All right. Just hold him down. You on that side, JP on this side. When I tell you to shine that light somewhere, do it. When I tell you to hand me a clean towel, do it.
Okay, so I've been using the same tricks and I'll tell you the gear we used. We used a Red Dragon 6K and it had a 2:1 sensor. We needed a little extra squeeze, so we used the Helios 442 with the anamorphic adapter. And that got us the kind of room we needed in order to not crop more in post. But unfortunately, what it didn't do is give us that anamorphic look in the way we wanted. So I really had to dial that in with these tricks in post. So whether you have an anamorphic adapter and you're just trying to enhance it, or actually get the anamorphic look with spherical glass, this trick is the way to do it. This is, in my opinion, kind of the only way to get that anamorphic look without it looking fake and cheesy and obviously not anamorphic. Obviously, I've talked a whole lot about the anamorphic adapter in this video. I've had it for about a year, so make sure to like and subscribe to stay tuned for my 1-year review of the anamorphic adapter and why you should or shouldn't get it based on your own needs. But if you like this video, make sure to leave a like and comment down below whether you agreed with me, disagreed with me, if you have any questions about any of the shots or, you know, any of the techniques I've been using in this video to get that anamorphic look. I appreciate having discussions down in the comments and hearing what you guys are thinking about my content and about just filmmaking in general. So again, thank you guys for liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time.